faithfully delivering value by interpreting great books worldwide. Hello, this is Sally with the Book Talk. Today we're interpreting the book Free Your Brain with the subtitle 12 Laws to Unleash Your Talent. Why are pictures easier to remember than words? Why should you familiarize yourself with the exam venue before the test? Why does giving examples deepen understanding and memory? Behind these everyday things we take for granted, the brain's operating mechanisms are at work. If we understand how the brain works, we can use it better, making learning and work more effortless. Today, Free Your Brain will teach you how to use your brain efficiently and unleash its potential. The author, John Medina, is director of the Brain Application Research Center at Pacific University in the U.S. and a visiting professor at the University of Washington, specializing in human brain research. Madeline 1B.X. He's also a best-selling science writer. Besides Free Your Brain, his other works include Brain Rules and more. In this book, Medina outlines 12 laws of brain operation to help people better utilize their brains in learning and life. After publication, it became a hit brain science book and topped Amazon's Neuropsychology bestseller list. Next, we'll break down this book into 3 parts for you. First, what changes occur in the brain when we learn? Second, how to boost learning efficiency. Third, how does lifestyle affect the brain? First, let's dive into part 1. What happens in the brain when we learn? Scientists found that when people learn new things, neural structures in the brain change simultaneously. This involves 2 changes. First, your brain assigns small groups of neurons to memorize new knowledge. Neurons for one topic range from thousands to hundreds of thousands, responding only to related stimuli and ignoring others. Scientists did an experiment during surgery on a man with epilepsy, showing him a photo of Jennifer Aniston. Aniston played Rachel in Friends and was once named the world's sexiest woman. As a result, when seeing this photo, a neuron in the man's brain suddenly lit up. Then scientists brought several more photos of Aniston for the man to see, and that neuron fired 7 times. But later, scientists showed over 80 photos of other celebrities or non-celebrities to the man, and that neuron never fired again. This shows that this neuron in the man's brain is specifically about Aniston. He must have been exposed to Aniston-related information before. For example, he might have seen Aniston in photos on TV or in real life, and he might even know some things about her. So his brain assigned a dedicated neuron for Aniston, just like this man. When you learn something new, your brain also assigns dedicated neurons for specific content. Over time, your brain develops a whole set of neurons unique to you, reflecting your learning and life experiences from childhood on. The author shares an anecdote about Michael Jordan, the basketball legend. In the 1990s, he suddenly retired from basketball and started playing baseball. But his performance on the baseball field was shockingly poor. As the media put it back then, it couldn't be worse. If the word undoubtedly, Jordan's reaction speed and muscles were top-notch, so why couldn't he play baseball well? The reason is that years of basketball had developed a dedicated set of neurons in his brain for it, making him skilled there, but baseball was a whole different story. In learning, the brain's second change is that neurons storing new knowledge also connect with those storing old knowledge. For instance, seeing DNA's double helix for the first time might remind you of twisted dough or the concept of weightlessness from physics class. You might recall the experience of riding a pirate ship at an amusement park. This processing by the brain makes new knowledge meaningful and easier to remember. During learning, whether forming dedicated neurons or connecting with other knowledge, it relies on changing neural connections, bridges that transmit signals between neurons. In the learning process, these neural connections affect incoming information. Some strengthen, some weaken, and some disconnect completely. Meanwhile, many new neural connections form, helping us understand and remember new knowledge. Now that we know what changes happen in the brain during learning, how can we leverage these changes to boost learning efficiency? That's what part 2 covers, improving learning efficiency. There are 2 key points. First, deeply encode information when initially learning it. When you first encounter information, your brain perceives and processes it. This process is called encoding. Encoding involves changes in neural connections across different brain regions. Scientists found deeper encoding engages more neurons and creates more neural connections. This makes information easier to recall later, improving learning outcomes. So how do we deeply encode information? First method, use multiple senses. Engage sight, hearing, smell, touch together during learning. Research shows when information is only presented verbally, people remember just 10% after 3 days. But adding an image during verbal explanation boosts recall to 65%. Multisensory learning works far better than single-sense approaches because multisensory processing activates more brain regions, creating more neural connections. For example, seeing a dog sends visual information to your visual cortex. Hearing barking simultaneously sends auditory information to your auditory cortex. Forming integrated conclusions requires more neural communication between brain regions, enhancing memory. Vision consumes nearly half of the brain's resources among all senses. Thus, it's especially crucial for learning. Human ancestors spent millennia in grasslands, using vision to spot threats, find food, and identify mates. So the more visual the content, the deeper its impression and easier recall. Visual information includes images, videos, and text. Among these, images are what the brain loves and remembers best, while text recall is less effective. That's because the brain sees text as tiny pictures. Reading requires recognizing each character's features, like images, making it much harder than recognizing a single picture. So, if you want better memory or information delivery, one great picture beats 1,000 words. Combining multimedia like images, text, and sound dramatically boosts learning effectiveness. Regarding deep encoding, the second method is creating context dependence, keeping the learning and recall environments consistent. During learning, the environment links to the content, creating more neural connections. Thus, the environment becomes a memory retrieval cue. Being in the same environment increases recall probability. This environment could be a location, a smell, or even an emotion. The environment itself isn't the memory target but aids recall. First, location. An experiment had 2 groups memorize words, one on land, one underwater, then tested recall in different environments. The land learning group scored significantly higher recalling on land than underwater. The underwater group scored much higher recalling underwater than on land. Clearly, matching learning and recall environments dramatically improves memory. That's why familiarizing with exam venues beforehand matters. When familiarizing, best review exam material inside the actual venue. Beyond location, consider smell. You might have experiences like smelling braised pork. You might recall your mother busy in the kitchen during childhood. Or smelling familiar perfume might remind you of times with an ex. Smelling past scents can evoke memories from that time. Like the famous Proust effect in neuroscience named after French writer Marcel Proust. In Search of Lost Time, he described a classic scene. The protagonist dipped a Madeleine cake in tea like childhood, and the familiar aroma evoked vivid memories of his childhood home, nearby paths, and the town. Thus, the Proust effect. Using the Proust effect, you can intentionally expose yourself to the same scent during learning and recall to boost memory. The author tested 2 student groups. One attended class with perfume sprayed, the other without, then tested their comprehension. During testing, he sprayed perfume in both classrooms. As expected, the group exposed to perfume during both learning and testing performed significantly better. Additionally, we can use emotions for context dependence. Experiments show matching emotional states during learning and recall also aids memory. For example, knowledge learned while happy is better recalled when happy again. Third method for deep encoding. Use examples. When learning, ensure you accurately understand the meaning first. Don't memorize mechanically. Understanding means connecting new information to existing knowledge. This creates additional neural connections in your brain. Old knowledge is easily recalled, and like pulling a radish brings mud, this increases recall probability for new knowledge. So how to deepen understanding? Simplest method, provide examples. An experiment had students read a 32-paragraph article where paragraphs varied in examples, none, one, or multiple, theme-related. Results. Paragraphs with empathy with emphasis were best remembered. Key, use familiar personalized examples. Personal experiences work better than friends' examples for memory. This concludes the first key point for improving learning efficiency, deep encoding. The second key point is batch input with spaced repetition. Batch input means not cramming everything at once, but dividing material into chunks over multiple sessions. For example, when reading a book, don't finish it in one sitting. Spread it over several days for better retention. In one study, 2 groups memorized words. One crammed all in one day, with constant repetition. The second group had 2 weeks for batched memorization, studying some words every few days. The result? The first group performed far worse because memory remains fragile shortly after learning. New neural connections aren't solid yet and are easily modified or reshaped. Overloading the brain during this period causes confusion between new and prior information, leading to memory distortion. I know. So, to ensure memory effectiveness, prevent cognitive indigestion. Now about reviewing. We all know timely reviews help memories last longer. Reviewing strengthens relevant neural connections, deepening memories. But the author notes, effective reviewing also requires spacing to prevent content confusion. For example, reviewing exam material over 2 weeks before finals works better than last-minute cramming. You might wonder, when reviewing new knowledge, neural connections are unstable and prone to interference, but reviewed content is already learned material. Shouldn't those connections be solid? Why the confusion? Because our brain has a quirk. Recalling information temporarily destabilizes its neural connections, making them malleable. Just like with newly input information. Right, that covers part 2. To boost learning efficiency, focus on 2 points. First, deep encoding during initial learning using 3 methods, starting with multisensory engagement. Using examples and creating context dependence to boost learning efficiency. Second, batch input with spaced repetition. Cramming causes cognitive indigestion and memory confusion. So both learning and reviewing should be batched. Working with your brain's rhythm yields better results. In daily life, we must accommodate the brain's preferences to optimize its function. Now to part 3, how lifestyle affects the brain. We'll focus on 3 aspects: sleep, exercise, and stress. First, sleep is crucial for the brain. Scientists found sleep deprivation directly impairs cognitive function. In one experiment, students slept under 7 hours on weekdays and 40 minutes less on weekends for a period. Their academic performance declined significantly. Another soldier study showed 1 sleepless night caused 30% cognitive decline, while 2 all-nighters caused 60%. Why does sleep affect cognition? One reason, sleep gives the brain rest. Rested brains function better. But crucially, during most sleep, the brain isn't resting. It's replaying your daytime experiences to consolidate learning. Actual rest occupies only 20% of sleep time. This true rest occurs in non-REM sleep, your deepest sleep, the other 80%. Your brain is more active than when awake. Neurons constantly reconfigure connections, automatically reviewing and reinforcing daytime knowledge. Real-life examples abound. Mendeleev conceived the periodic table in sleep. Novelists keep paper by bed for morning inspiration. Keeping paper and pen bedside for morning writing often yields inspired work. So when stuck on daytime problems, the best solution is often to sleep on it. You might suddenly figure it out when waking up the next morning. So how long should we actually sleep? When should we sleep? The answer varies from person to person. Everyone has a different biological clock. Your biological clock is determined by various hormones and chemicals in your body. It relates to your age, gender, special physiological periods, and more. Some are early birds. Some are night owls. Some need 8 hours, others wake naturally after 6. Whatever type you are, choose what suits you best. but we all share a tendency to need an afternoon nap, for reasons still unclear. Scientists found such naps bring unexpected benefits to afternoon learning and work. A Harvard study confirmed a 45-minute nap boosts learning efficiency. Another pilot study showed a 26-minute afternoon nap improved control abilities by 36%. So the author recommends creating conditions for a post-lunch nap to enhance afternoon productivity. Now, from sleep to exercise's brain impact. Brains love movement. The more you move, the smarter you get.
Earlier, we mentioned human ancestors walking 10 to 20 kilometers daily while living on grasslands.
Our brains evolved through constant movement. Research shows active people have better quick reasoning, abstract thinking, and adaptability than sedentary ones. When regular exercisers stop, these abilities decline. Exercise also prevents cognitive chronic diseases. Regular aerobic exercise like 20-minute daily walks can reduce Alzheimer's risk by over half. Why does this boost cognitive levels? Two reasons. First, exercise increases blood flow to the brain, delivering ample glucose and oxygen. Glucose is the brain's basic fuel, while oxygen quickly clears free radicals produced by the brain. The free radicals are metabolic waste that damage cells. Clearing them promptly makes brain operation more efficient. The second reason is that exercise stimulates the brain to produce a special protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. This protein acts like fertilizer for neurons, keeping them youthful and healthy while strengthening their connections. Notably, neurons in the hippocampus, vital for memory, are especially sensitive to this protein. Without sufficient BDNF in the hippocampus, neurons malfunction. So how much exercise is needed? The answer, even small amounts make significant differences. Studies show exercising just twice weekly, regardless of form, benefits your brain. The author himself walks on a treadmill while working. He recommends regularly getting up from seats, taking at least 2 daily breaks. If possible, place treadmills or exercise equipment at workplaces for on-the-move activity. Both sleep and exercise are brain pleasers. Finally, let's discuss what brains dislike. Stress. When stressed, the body releases adrenaline, causing rapid heartbeat, high blood pressure, and triggering fight or flight response. Like encountering a charging dog while walking. Adrenaline surges, triggering instant flight. After escaping, you'd sigh with relief. Then your body releases cortisol to neutralize excess adrenaline, eliminating stress. You return to normal. This stress response is an evolutionary adaptation we've retained. This defensive reaction releases maximum energy during life-threatening situations for survival. It comes and goes quickly, without major impact on body or brain. But modern stresses often linger, like daily overtime exhaustion while fearing job loss, or children and housework consuming all your time. These unsolvable short-term issues create prolonged stress called chronic stress. Under chronic stress, the hormones meant for emergencies stay in the body for extended periods. Staying in our body causes harm. For instance, adrenaline damages blood vessels, leading to heart attacks or strokes. Excess cortisol harms the hippocampus cells responsible for memory, weakening learning and memory abilities. In cognitive tests, chronic stress severely impairs memory and problem-solving skills. Studies also found that chronic family stress damages children's learning abilities, severely affecting their grades. So if you want your child to excel academically, start by creating a relaxed home environment. However, the author notes stress affects everyone differently due to genetics, environment, and other factors. So, for example, the book mentions a girl named Jill who was sexually abused by her biological father in childhood. At age 7, she witnessed her father shoot himself. Jill's mother frequently entered psychiatric hospitals and often severely beat her. But Jill still grew into an optimistic and cheerful girl, becoming a model student and excellent singer. Everyone has a stress threshold. Beyond this point, stress becomes harmful. Within this threshold, stress can sometimes stimulate creativity and vitality in the brain. For instance, if you take an exam with very difficult questions, you'll feel stressed. But if the stress doesn't exceed your threshold, it might excite you and lead to outstanding performance. So, how can you tell if you're under harmful stress? The author provides 3 stress indicators. When all 3 indicators appear simultaneously, you're under harmful stress.
The first indicator is that the situation causes a physiological reaction detectable externally.
For example, if you're forced to work overtime late for days, coming home angry every time, and your family can sense your anger from your expression and tone. The second indicator is that you hate the situation. How can you tell? You can ask yourself, if you could avoid this experience, would you avoid it? For instance, if you could choose, would you avoid overtime work? If the answer is yes, then you meet the second indicator.
The third stress indicator is feeling completely powerless, unable to control the situation.
Take overtime work. Do you feel you can control it? Can you avoid overtime through your own efforts? If you feel powerless and helpless, this matches the third indicator.
When detecting harmful stress, promptly self-regulate to relax.
Disengage from your current state to reduce and escape this pressure.
If only 1 or 2 indicators apply, observe longer or enjoy mild stress benefits. Well, that covers most of the book's content. Let's briefly summarize. During learning, neurons and neural connections change in our brains. Leveraging this pattern improves learning efficiency. For example, during initial learning, deeply encode information for stronger impressions. Methods include multisensory engagement, examples, and context dependence.
Additionally, spaced batching prevents memory confusion. Lifestyle also affects brain function.
Adequate sleep and exercise aid memory. Chronic stress damages blood vessels and harms the brain. If detecting harmful stress, regulate to protect hippocampal cells governing memory. Our brains operate by their own rules. Working with these rules frees the brain, maximizing potential release. This concludes our interpretation of Free Your Brain. Study notes below. Until next time.